What's one thing you want people to remember from today's conversation?
That there is greatness locked up in you, and it often takes healing. I mean, we have to come to believe in ourselves and believe that even as a weak vessel, God wants to use us for that greatness to be released. And, God has limited himself to human skin to touch people. He's not going to just kind of come down in a thunderbolt. He's going to use you. So I would, dig into the possibility you can make a difference.
Welcome back to another episode here on the Hart Hustle Podcast, where we speak to leaders that are making the changes in the world today. And look who we have here. We have Seth Barnes from Adventures in Missions. So excited, CEO and founder. Has been doing this for so many years. But Seth, let me know, man. I meet you at a coffee shop. I meet you at a networking event and ask you the question. Seth, tell me a little bit more about your mission. Tell me more about the nonprofit. What does that sound like?
Yeah, so we're about raising up young people to realize the greatness that we believe God has deposited in them. The world is telling them that they can't do things. And what I found is that it's amazing what young people can do if they're just given the opportunity to make a few mistakes and encouraged along the way. They can make a difference. And we've seen that over and over again. And so I love, even as I get older, to continue to find new young people that we can invest deeply in, and that's what Adventures in Missions does.
Seth, you spent pretty much your whole life just empowering young people through missions. What's the most rewarding part of that journey for you?
The most rewarding part is, it's two things. One, it's being able to address the people that God himself cares about, the poor, the needy, the prisoner, the orphan, the widow. I think he cries over them. And at the same time, to kind of shock and wake up young people to the opportunity that they have to make a difference. I love both of those sides of the coin. And so, yeah, you experience that every time you get to take somebody who has got a lot and bring them in contact with those who have very little, and watch what God does through them.
God is good, isn't he?
He is.
Yes, he is. I want to go back to that moment in Cambodian refugee camp. You were 20 years old. What did you see that really made you say, you know what, this is my calling. I found my purpose.
Yeah. Well, I knew that, from the Bible, it says that we should take care of widows and orphans in their distress. It says that Jesus went out and he healed people, and he did all this stuff that, you look at it and you go, well, I could never do all that. But I sensed that I should at least try. And so, when I was a senior in college, I saw this genocide that was occurring in Cambodia, 2 million people killed. And
Wow.
I just felt God saying, go. And there was no easy way to go. It was now there are planes flying back and forth all the time to get a ticket. Back in my day, it was hard, and God did provide a way. And I was pretty quickly in a refugee camp, and I was able to, all these people that were just stumbling across, starving, and to help them just to feed themselves and to get back on their feet and to recognize that the world had not completely ended, that there was still life to be had. And wow, I felt like I was making such a difference. What a contrast with the life that I had been living, which was all around meeting my needs and my pleasures. And, to be able to go and use my time and talents to actually change a life was a revelation for me. I didn't know that I could do that.
Yeah. I love it. I'm a story person, so I always love to hear someone's story. And for me, it's selfish because I'm learning from people. In your case, it's almost selfish because you're able to help people, and while you're helping people, and really you're helping yourself. Such a powerful move, and something that really started in your garage. What was the hardest part of getting started, and what really kept you going? You're in the garage, sometimes
Right.
probably cold, sometimes hot. Tell me a little story more about that.
Well, it wasn't anything that was dramatic and wonderful. It was actually out of pain. I had been fired, so I didn't have any choice. And And I really was kind of tired of trying to do good. And I had a thought that I might be called of God to continue to do good, but it was too much work. And so I was really at a bad place. I was at a place of giving up. And the garage was like the last place. It was next to the rakes and the lawn equipment. It felt like a pitiful thing. I felt pitiful. I didn't feel like a great visionary, but I had enough resilience that I didn't give up. And so I think that's a thing that I love to impart to young people, that small beginnings are okay. And you don't have to be wonderful. You just have to start, and you have to be able to recognize that there's going to be pain along the way. So use the pain as raw material for, getting to the ultimate calling that you may have. So it was. I wish I could tell you that it was magical. It was not. It was hard.
Seth, but as I listen to the story, right, I kind of break down. I always feel that God does things in mysterious ways. Getting fired, a blessing in disguise. Working next to the rake. Well, you got to get down and dirty, Seth, if you want to do this work, right? And as I sit here and think about it, I always think that God shows up in ways that we've never really imagined. So as I'm listening to you, and maybe you didn't, at that moment it didn't feel like that. At that moment, it felt like,
Yeah.
what do you want me to do, God? Right? But as I sit here and I kind of really break it down, it's like, man, he was really showing you, and he was testing you in a sense.
Exactly. That's so true. And I think what I've learned is that you have to get to the end of yourself. And so really, if I've got a ministry, the ministry is helping people get to the end of themselves. Like, we'll take them and put them in the same kind of hard places I was in when I went to Cambodia, and it just seems like impossible. And in that place of impossibility, when God shows up, now you've got something that approximates intimacy, because you trust him in ways that you didn't before. Before, you're able to, like, just go to your own bank account and pay for it. But when your bank account's empty, and when you don't have what you think you need, and God shows up, now you trust him in whole new ways. And that is the magic that I found, that I want to impart to young people.
That's that faith, having faith, right? That he's going
Yeah,
to show up. If you can sit down with the 24-year-old you, which wasn't a long ago, it was a couple of years ago, Seth,
right.
right? What's that one piece of advice that you give young 20-year-old Seth? How about that? 20-year-old Seth getting started into this
Yeah, yeah,
mission.
yeah. Now I love, I still get to disciple and mentor people who have a lot of ambition. And I had a young man come to me. His name is Josh, and he'd finished the world race. So the world race is a year around the world, and you're encountering a lot of different countries and experiences. He came, and after that, I knew that he had entrepreneurship in him. And he said, if you could send me to the toughest country in the world with the hardest assignment, what would it be? And at first I thought, well, maybe Uganda, working with South Sudanese refugees and helping to educate their young people. But then I thought, no, a tougher place is actually India, where there's persecution. And so I actually sent him there. And subsequently, he and I did a project for 2 or 3 years together. And at the conclusion of that, now he was ready to go and to do something on his own. And his business has become very successful. And so I think in that story, in that process, is my advice. My advice is, go apprentice under somebody and do a hard thing. Do something that seems impossible, but you're apprenticing, you're learning.
Hmm.
And give yourself some space to not just go to school, but to go and try things with somebody else mentoring you. And subsequent to that, you're going to learn enough of where are the handholds in this cliff I'm trying to climb in life, to be able to do it on your own. And I think that'd be the most important thing.
It's so cool. We spoke the first time, and then I was able to look at the website, and I was able to see that over 170 young people have been on mission trips.
170,000.
70,000, sorry. Yes, let's make that
Yeah,
correct. 170,000 young people have been
right.
on, and that's a lot of people, a lot of lives that have been touched, which is so incredible. But how do you manage that momentum? How do you keep it going?
Oh, it all stopped at COVID. So when COVID, we brought 600 people back within a week from all over the world.
Wow.
dozens of countries. It was quite a logistical thing. So now we've had to start over again. So I had to go and find more young leaders that I had not trusted before and kind of reboot. And I think just taking a chance on people is the key. Like you've got to throw them in the deep end, see if they swim. And
That's
I
life
love,
sometimes.
yeah. And most people in the church, they want to control and they want to make it too safe. And parents hate to kind of see their kids maybe floundering in the deep end and will they swim or drown? Those are hard things for parents. But
Yeah.
I don't know, for better or for worse, my calling is to make it hard and see if they live.
You're also in a place where there's so many different backgrounds and language. Earlier, you were talking Spanish to me, so I can only imagine that you know it. But how do you make sure your young missionaries actually connect with communities that they serve?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I remember sending a number of people to Thailand, and they went for a couple of years, and it wasn't enough time. And I mentor a young man who has a mission agency, and they go for at least 5 years to begin with. I think that's probably an appropriate time frame. So I begin with a time frame and say it's going to take you time to learn culture and language. And if you're serious about this thing, really making a difference, uh, plan to make that investment, and then you'll begin to reap the benefits of the investment maybe in your third and fourth year. And so, yeah, I think resilience is one thing, and time frames that are longer would be another.
Resilience, man, shows up in so many leaders' conversations. You have to have that resilience. And what you're saying is you're building young leaders. So yeah, that resilience definitely, is going to be one of those big
You need
deals when it comes
young
to it.
people need more cycles failing. Like,
Hmm.
have you? They go, well, I failed 4 times in life, and I'm like, by your age, I'd probably failed 25 times. So
Hmm.
get more cycles. Like, go fail more.
Absolutely.
That's a big piece of advice.
One of the biggest mentors, one of the biggest lessons my mentor told me was it's okay to fail. You're only learning. You won't
It's
make the same mistake twice. At least now you know.
Exactly. It's not just
Hold up.
okay, it's necessary. You have to fail. Like there's not a better way to learn. So just make friends with failure.
I actually was talking to a friend the other day, and he was telling me, man, Ephraim, feels like a roller coaster. It's like so many ups and downs. I said, good. That means you're living. Because if you're not on that roller coaster, then you're not really
Exactly.
living, man. The ups and
Exactly.
downs is part of life.
Yeah, change your frame. Change
Yeah.
life is meant to be that way. Look at the heroes of the Bible. Look at David or Moses or Abraham. They all had a roller coaster. Like there's no other way to live it. Jesus had a roller coaster. Paul had a roller coaster. When you're a hero to somebody, you're going to have setbacks and hard times. And it's a great thing to be a hero, but it's a hard thing to be a hero.
100%. And with missions today looking different than they did 10, 20 years ago, what's changed the most in how young people actually engage with the faith-based work?
Well, a lot of young people don't have faith because they've been overprotected. And so they've not had to do it. When I describe being in the garage, like I didn't have any other alternatives. So I had to lean on my faith.
Hmm.
And that's happened so many times in my life where I didn't have any alternatives, so there was only faith left. And I think for a lot of young people, because they've been overprotected, they don't have the same steel inside that says God is going to show up, because He did show up for me in these other times. And so I kind of look at that and it makes me sad, and that's why I don't feel as much remorse about giving them pain. Pain is the raw material that allows them to get to the place of resilience and faith. I don't know. Did I answer the question you asked?
Yeah, you did. You did. I would. It depends how young, right? Because I feel like we're actually seeing a different. At least it's different everywhere. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm in a generation where I'm actually seeing more young people going to church. I think what's changing is the church itself, which is
Yes.
then leading others to go into them.
So there's a
But
hunger. There's a
yeah.
hunger that's awesome. I love it. And I think also there's a cynicism about all the lies that, frankly, we boomers have foisted on the young. It's like, oh, trust this politician, he'll be great. Trust this pastor, he'll be great. No, 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 no. All the pastors, all the politicians, they all like have messed me over. So why should I trust you? So I love the hunger. It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing.
hmm How about someone that's listening right now? If someone's tuning in, maybe a young mind that wants to follow in the steps of Seth Barnes, and they're saying to themselves, "I want to be part of something bigger." What would you actually say is the best way to even get started?
Let's have a conversation. And I think you got to find somebody who's actually doing the sorts of things that you want to do and go have a conversation with them. I was listening to a podcast today, and it's a younger person. I don't know how old he is, but maybe he's in late 20s, and he's doing stuff that like I want to do. So I want to go have a conversation with him. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him up or email him, or like tell me what you've learned. And I'd say the same thing for somebody like you said who's just starting out. I'd figure out, well, where could I have a conversation? Texting is often what young people do, but I think what they really need is the opportunity to just kind of do a cannonball into the deep end and see if they can swim or not.
A lot of times, Steph, I would also just to piggyback off of that, that's really true leadership is that you have to surround yourself with people that just know more than you. Because
Right.
I don't care how old you are, there's something to learn every single day. Steph, you talked about someone younger than you that may know something a little different. Sometimes you may have to go a little older than you to find a little different,
Right.
right?
Right.
And for those leaders that are listening, yeah, that is a very, very good advice to provide them is go learn it. Take
Right.
that risk.
Yeah, and sometimes you need structure around that. So when I started the world race, I wanted to build enough structure that you go for a year, try a bunch of different things, learn from it. It's going to be different each month, and then you can get a sense for kind of where you resonate. And I currently am in building a school for young people that would go and try and figure out what is my career, and we're calling it Journey School, and we'll begin with in September going to Italy to start a coffee shop where
Nice.
we give away a cappuccino for free, and if people want prayer, we'll give that away for free too. And
I love it.
it's I think people just need a project to engage in, and so Journey School is something where we give young people projects to grow instead of just books. And
So I got a question, right? You're working with different cultures, language, experiences. Have
mhm.
communication ever been a big hurdle for you and your mission?
It's always it's the biggest hurdle. I mean, there's a communication of the heart. Often the words are fine, but are we really expressing our heart? And that's hard. It requires vulnerability. Yeah, it's and there's the generation. So I'm an older man, and I'm dealing with younger people. I struggle to really speak the heart language of a young person. So just knowing that awareness allows me to more effectively partner with people who can communicate in ways that I'm not equipped to.
We got to find you a tool that maybe helps you mentor effectively, especially when you're spread across the globe. It's so cool because a lot of times people do mission in one location. You're doing
Right.
mission around the world, and you don't see many people get into that. So I definitely love it, and I'm happy that you're finding passionate, young-minded individuals. Whether you have to had to restart during the pandemic or not, this was actually really good. Sometimes you have to kind of rebuild, right? Sometimes you have to pivot, and I love entrepreneurship for that reason and leadership because there's times that you have to look at something and say, okay, well, how do I go about this now? Not give up because there's going to be those moments where you want to give up, and I'm pretty sure Seth, there was those moments that you're like, what am I doing? Right? I could be doing other things, but you haven't given up. You've continued to find those ways. But there's only one of you. But so many young people who could learn from experience. Have you ever thought about how tech might actually help scale mentorship?
Not just thought about it, I've invested in it. And
There we go. There we go. You on it?
with simple investments. My first one was maybe 22 years ago, and it's paid off spectacularly. And yeah, I've I've had to learn not how to code, but how to work with coders and how to move from just coding websites to Web3 and blockchain, and now it's all about AI. And so, how do you apply AI to the medical issue that we've got with first responders in America, and how do we apply AI to that? There's all this stuff that at my age,
Mhm.
a lot of people kick back and they go, I'm not going to continue learning. And I'm just the kind of person who I love to learn. I'm constantly a curious person digging into something that's new. And you're right with what you said before, Efrain. You may be the kind of person who could actually help me continue to do that. So maybe we need to partner, because if communication's a problem for me, it's not a problem for you. And
Yeah,
so I'm constantly looking for that. Like, where are the people who can help me in ways that I'm weak?
that's it. A lot. That's all about leadership. Listen, you're not the strongest in the room. You just know how to lead the team. You got to find those strong people in different suits. So yeah, maybe we have those offline conversations. One thing I also want to talk about that you've mentioned to me last time, and we spoke briefly, was storytelling. How crucial is part of the mission work. But you said that young people struggle with their stories, telling
I,
their
I,
story.
I
Why do you
watched
think that
that.
is?
I don't know. Social media tends to give the stories to us in smaller packets.
Mm,
So even this conversation we're having right now is a half an hour conversation. Well, that's a longer. So look at TikTok or look at Instagram. What amount of time do we allocate to the stories there as we flip through, scroll through? It's just often seconds. So
mm-hmm.
I think we had more time around a campfire. Yeah, storytelling be easier. And so with millennials, it was a lot easier for me. We gave everybody that went on the world race a blog, and they would blog usually 2 times a week, and they would write these great stories of what God was doing in their lives, hard stories of their pain and why they struggle with projection, and how this was complicating their ability to care for other people, complicated things. And it was so wonderful to be able to just share their stories with people. Now I just watch, words like typed words don't work for young people. They'll maybe use a video, and so I'm really kind of digging into that. How do we use video to capture a person's story? When you think about a story, you're thinking about a character you care about with a problem, and somewhere there's suspense and what they're sharing about that problem. And I just I love for young people to dig into those elements of a story and figure out what works for them.
I mean, very true. When you think about a lot of people not reading, they're watching. You mentioned TikTok, one of the biggest platforms right now. We see what happened when they took
Yeah,
it off for a day here in America, and people went
right,
crazy, right? Because
right,
that was their thing. And I'm one of those people that definitely uses TikTok often, and it is very short. It's telling a story in 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, because the attention span has changed for people, right? When you have all types of social media, you have the internet now. I feel old when I say this, but I'm pretty still young. Is that I remember when the internet was just a thing, or when
oh yeah,
MySpace was just a thing.
right,
Now there's so much to consume that you can only watch a 60 seconds, right? And you see it happening, shifting. Even media. Look what happened at now, where they're allowing TikTokers to actually be a part of the press
right,
because they tell stories shorter,
right.
right? Like versus the media. So if you can kind of go back to maybe that one mission story that stuck with you, one that if more people heard, it would actually change your perspective. Do you have that in mind?
So many. So which to choose from? I look at Matthew 10 and what Jesus did, and he said, I'm going to send you out like you saw me go out, and you're going to preach the gospel, you're going to heal the sick, you're going to raise the dead. I think about that. All right, so what's like most dramatic? Probably the raising of the dead. And we have actually seen that. So I could tell you stories about, there's a story in South Africa where a couple of our world racers encountered an accident that had just happened, and a young boy had just died. And heart stopped, and the sheet being put over them, and the racers came up and said, "Can we pray?" And here's this child that's been declared dead, and they pray, and the child coughs and comes back to life. And that's Matthew 10. That's what Jesus did, and he promised us, that we'll do greater things than these. And I don't think we really give ourselves the chance to see if that's true or not. I think a lot of us maybe want, like I did, I wanted to see if it was true. I was scared, but also was ready to take some risks. And I just think that young people need to be given those kinds of risks. I've seen the last coaching job I had of 60. I had 60 young people 13 years ago, and they're going around the world. And man, they encountered so much danger, but boy, did their lives change. So I'm like, those kinds of stories that they encounter will stay with them for life. They just need the opportunity. They needed the opportunity. And now these guys got married and they're raising children. Those children are going to need the opportunity too, to see if God's real and to trust him in ways that seem extreme.
This is so good. This is so good. If you could design something that can help you, the perfect tool to support your young missionaries, something that is a 24/7 mentor, coach, or even guide to help missionaries globally, what does that even look like for you?
It looks like a relationship. It looks like a phone call. It looks like a phone call, not a text. It looks like me getting on a plane if it's necessary. I've got a friend who is in a new mission field. It's tech, and he's got extraordinary leverage and millions of dollars. And there's a place in the world that he's going to go to in a while that's going to require me to change everything about my schedule. I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to tell people no that I already made commitments to, just to be able to go and be with him in this extraordinary new phase where he's meeting, key leaders in the world at a time that they need Jesus too. And
Yeah,
so I just think I'd give him a relationship.
I love it. If you could look ahead 10 years, Seth, where do you see global missions heading? What excites you about the future when it comes to that?
I've got well, he's not so young anymore, but when he first got to know me about 20 years ago on my blog, Uche Izuora from Nigeria was a younger man, and he's got kids that are growing up now. And Uche felt God calling him to the South Sudanese, and South Sudan was going through a civil war, and eventually the war became so bad that the refugees, the people of South Sudan, had to go as refugees to northern Uganda, and in that place, Uche helped form a school, which is now 1,000 people, 1,000 kids go there, and the parents really help do that. And I got a chance to kind of help sponsor him in his project with my donors, and I continue to speak to his young people that he disciples that have remained behind in South Sudan. And there's this now we've got Starlink, so I was able to actually communicate, in person in a way, not with my face, not just my voice. And that excites me, like to actually
100%.
develop relationship with those people that were not refugees as well as the refugees, and to help. I tell them, you guys are not refugees. You're nation builders. Flip the script here. It's time for South Sudan to rise up and to take the mantle of authority that God's given you and to show a better way. And that's something I can do because I've seen it. I've seen it with the Cambodians that changed their country. And so let's take a new generation in a new place, in a hard place, give them hope, give them resources, and see what they can do in the power of the Lord.
We're going to start wrapping this up. So I got some questions to put you in the hot seat here, okay?
Sure.
All right. If someone wants to, well, let's actually go back to this one. What's one unexpected lesson you learned from leading thousands of young people in missions?
It's going to be messy. The church wants it to be clean. It's only going to be messy, and it only works when it's messy. So dive into the mess. Be vulnerable. Create space for vulnerability. Expect the mess, and stop. Appropriate grace. In fact, create a space that's so messy, you have to have grace or you're going to die.
I love it. I just love, Seth, how you're just to the point right here. If anyone's listening, for all those people that I want to listen and they feel that pull to just serve, what's the first step they should actually take?
You need to, again, it goes back to that apprenticeship thing. And, find somebody who actually knows where there are some pain points just in your own neighborhood or your own community. When we were raising our 5 kids, my wife, bless her heart, she went to the church and said, "What can I do?" They said, "Well, we don't have a janitor. You and your kids could clean the toilets." She did that. Like, that's a way to serve. So go to the people who know where the pain points in your community. I'd begin with your community don't go overseas until you've actually gone across the tracks to see who's hungry in your own community.
I love that. I definitely do love that. Especially like you said, going to your community, because so many people look outside first, but there's so many
Yeah,
people, your neighbors, that are still struggling. And if you can help those are people that can help you, then go help the world.
right.
So I love that you talked about that. So if someone wants to support Adventures in Mission, where's the best place for them to start? Is it website, social media? Where can they get started?
I'll give you two. Yeah, websites are the easiest. So, there's adventures.org gives you any number of, we take thousands of people every year in a variety of different trips.
Mhm.
And so if you're a college student, if you don't want to go to college, but you want to keep learning, check out Journey School and you'll find that on the web. But if you just want to engage in a conversation with more questions, then you can find me, my name, SethBarnes.com. And I believe in engaging with hungry people. If you're a hungry person, that's what I look for. And I don't mind being present, even if I don't know you, but you've got legitimate questions about how can I step up and do the sorts of things that I believe God has called me to do.
Love it. Final thought before we get to that blind question that we ask every single leader. What's one thing you want people to remember from today's conversation?
That there is greatness locked up in you, and it often takes healing. I mean, we have to come to believe in ourselves and believe that even as a weak vessel, God wants to use us for that greatness to be released. And God has limited himself to human skin to touch people. He's not going to just kind of come down in a thunderbolt. He's going to use you. So I would, dig into the possibility you can make a difference.
Perfect. This is that blind question. This is what everyone loves. Every leader, before we end the podcast, they answer a question and they ask the next leader a question. So the question for you would actually be, if you could build one tool to make your mission just 10 times easier, what would that look like?
So I go to the technology, and but technology gets you the first, I don't know, 5 or 10% of kind of being able to possibly engage in a relationship. So I would maybe, I especially want to connect with homeschoolers. Why? Because the moms especially care enough to invest their personal time in those homeschoolers. So if I could build anything, I would build some way of connecting with hungry homeschool moms who have dreams for their kids that they need help with.
I love it. And what would be your question, Seth, for the next leader that I interview, myself or Keenan, on the podcast?
Rate yourself on a Matthew 10 scale, on a 1 to 10. So it's Matthew 10 is the chapter, but how much of Matthew 10 have you personally implemented in your life? 1 to
I love
10.
it. I love it. With that being said, Seth, it's always been a pleasure. I know that we can do another 30 minutes if you really wanted to, but I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for serving the way that you have for so many years. Actually, I'm looking here, 36 years and 2 months to be exact. And that's probably not even the whole amount of time, because it probably started before that in the garage, right? But for those
Yeah.
still watching, thank you guys for being here. Make sure you guys subscribe. Another great leader. Seth, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you again
Efrain,
soon.
it's a pleasure. God bless.